Good evening. I would like to call the August 28, 2017 Bellbrook City Council meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Edwards?
Here.
Mr. Greenwood?
Here.
Mr. McGill?
Here.
Mrs. Middlestatter is absent. Mrs. Seeger-Lawson?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schweller?
Here.
Mayor Baird?
Here. May I have a motion to excuse Mrs. Middlestatter?
So move.
May I have a second?
Second.
And roll call.
Motion by Mrs. Seeger-Lawson to excuse Mrs. Middlestatter, seconded by Mr. McGill. Mrs. Seeger-Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. McGill?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mr. Schweller?
Yes.
Mayor Baird?
Yes. Formal approval of the City Council regular meeting minutes of July 10th, 2017. Does any member on council have any corrections, additions to the regular City Council meeting minutes of our last meeting?
None there.
Seeing none, the minutes are approved as written. Special guests and special announcements. We have a couple things this evening. First, a name that I'm going to mess up. Ashley Pachelski, who is representing our, I know, the cheerleaders and the streamers. We have this conversation every year, so please come up.
So I'm here to represent Bellbrook High School Cheer. I'm one of the coaches. We would also like the council's permission, city's permission, to put up some foil streamers that we do every year just for spirit in the town. We'd be happy to take them down as soon as the season's over as well.
Any questions, Donna, DPNL? Do we?
No. You can put them on the DPL poles as long as you take them down.
Okay, I think that's our biggest concern, just take them down, so.
Absolutely. Happy to do so.
Well, I don't think we need a motion, I think we are good.
we're good.
So hopefully it'll raise some team spirit and win the next game.
Yes, we gotta get them out there for this next one.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Next, Police Chief Doug Daugherty, introduction of our SAFE program. Sounds like a really neat program, Chief, so why don't you let our residents know what they can do to begin this process and how it's gonna work.
Okay. City manager had come to me several months back and asked me to look into a program that is similar to what this is going to be in Washington Township. So I did a little work, but we kind of crafted it to the wants and needs to the city of Bellbrook and its residents. So SAFE is an acronym for Seniors Allowing Friendly Efforts. And basically, we would identify senior residents that don't have family nearby, or if they have family members but they just can't get to them or check on them routinely. We would have a list of people that we would check on and pay a home visit to make sure everything is okay. So we think that's a pretty good program to outreach the community members, to have a point of contact for safety and security for them. And I think if I had, my parents in the city, if they had something similar where they live, I think it'd be great to have someone checking on them just occasionally, just to see if everything's okay. So the checks would be face to face. Ideally, we would have this done on the weekends. We'd have two officers that would do this, Officer Rubel and Officer Jones, to go to the house, check on them, and the frequency and the duration of the visit would obviously depend on their specific needs, and that would vary from person to person, and would also be dependent upon how many people are in this program. If we have 5 people versus 50 people, it would make a difference in how long we could do that. So we have what we do is have a medical sheet. Basically, it's a basic sheet with the information the resident would fill out, keep there with them. So if there were a need for emergency services, this information would be right there for us, and for the squad if they were to come to the house. Everything would be on there to include their wishes and how they would want to be treated and stuff like that. So you probably ask, well, how do we start this, or how do we get this going? It's important to note that we probably ought to start with baby steps, to start slow, because We're trying to provide an additional service at no cost to anything that, other than what we're doing already. We already have the officers out, already doing this. But we need to identify a certain number of people, and we want to start kind of slow to make sure that what we're doing satisfies what they expect and what we can provide. So that's a fine line that we have to kind of determine, and we can slowly expand once we understand what we're doing and how we're going to provide it and how often and those kind of things. So I actually have a meeting in October with a group with the Lions Club. So this seems like a good place to start to see what kind of interest would be there. I personally know a lot of the members there, so there seems to be an interest there, but I will give them this information when I speak with them and see what kind of interest we have. And I have a couple other avenues where we can help identify people that might be in need to do this. So.
Chief, what about the Green County Council on Aging? I know we have a representative. I also know that we have the senior center up at the old, someone's gonna tell me, elementary. It's probably been elementary and middle school.
It's the education center now, Sugar Creek
Yeah,
Education Center.
Sugar Creek Education Center. I know they have activities up there, but that may be a good source for
Yes.
the Bellbrook residents.
We know of them. We know the fire department has a list of people that they know of people in need. So in inclement weather, they check on them. So there's things that we can kind of identify and add them to the list. So we'll see how this goes and how many people. But I don't think once this starts going, I personally believe it'll be popular. I think people will want to have us come by and perform, just a quick check to see how they're doing. And I think it'll be popular with everybody.
Council, what kind of questions or?
That sounds like a great idea.
Sounds like a good idea.
Great idea.
I just had a question. When the information that you gather, is that put in the dispatch center's software? Is that how that'll operate? The mechanics is.
The information sheet will be kept at their house,
Okay.
and then they would tell us where they would keep it. So maybe on their fridge, just someplace where we would know it is every time. So if they were in need of some help, or we can get them something, we'd have something there. We just take it down off the fridge, say, and give it to the squad when they come. Or
Okay.
there's even an idea, would be, down the road, but if there was a person that had, if we're doing checks on and we can't get into their house, they might have like a realtor box kept on their front door. We would know the code to get into that, be able to go into their house without damaging any their property, see what's going on, if they're okay or not, get them the services that they need, and that way. So.
But I think your point, is good. There's probably some of this information that could be shared with dispatch, so that if there's a contact information maybe that is needed for the family member, if it's in the house and we can't get in there, then it's of no value to us. So it may be something where if we can share that and put a note on that address in the dispatch system, that way if somebody doesn't respond, we need to know who to call. We need to have that information too. So that's sort of what we're trying to work
Right.
through, I guess, with some of this is
Yes.
what works and what do we need to do differently as we implement this.
Because the one thing you mentioned about the lock boxes, people that have the, I guess, life alerts and different ones, they usually have those boxes.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just thinking about ways of tying a lot of this stuff together. It's out there.
And that's why we're going to start slow.
Right,
Because
right.
so we don't get 50 people and have all these issues that we
Right.
haven't contemplated yet. So, but there's going to be a lot of those type things.
You're also gonna have to figure out what you'll do and what you won't do, like as far as, I don't know. They might need extra help that maybe inappropriate for the police to provide.
Correct. And I also work closely with the Council on Aging, Kelly Phillips, and she's a wealth of knowledge, so it would just be a phone call to her, and we might be something that we could even put on our website where we could detail this program and then a link to other services that would be
Assistance, yeah.
similar in care provisions. So.
I think it's a great idea, really.
I will tell you, this program works. I have an elderly parent, Northeast Ohio, that under a city there that has a similar program. It works once you get all the information out and into the system. And the city services for health and welfare can get in at any particular point in time. And it really does work well. So good kudos to the department for implementing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions for our chief? Thank you, Chief.
Okay,
Thanks for your program.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
The only thing I have is, so we are, Bellbrook Historical Museum Board, we had the legacy of Stephen Bell on August 12th. I would like to thank Alice Wiseman for helping put that together. She also wrote a letter. This is why kids need to learn how to read cursive. Dear council member, I wish to thank the council for all the support you have given to the museum and the activities we present to the community. All of us are hoping to present to the community segments of history which make Bellbrook the great place it has become. It has been a pleasure to curate displays which demonstrate the grand community which loves its past. As a volunteer, I've enjoyed learning Bellbrook's history, and I hope I can share this knowledge with those who visit the museum. So she's been a great asset to the museum, and I'd like to thank her for the letter and also for putting this together on August 12th. That is all I have for mayor's announcements. We have some public hearings and introduction of ordinances and resolutions this evening. We'll start with the public hearing of ordinances, or ordinance 2017-6. Mr. Schweller.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance number 2017-6, an ordinance amending ordinance 2016-14 to adjust the City of Bellbrook appropriations for 2017 to reflect additional costs in some line items and reduced costs in other line items. Whereas the City of Bellbrook adopted the 2017 annual budget based on the best information available at the time, whereas additional costs have or will occur in some line items and reduced costs are projected in other line items, which requires the amendment of various appropriation levels. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby ordains, Section 1, that the 2017 appropriation levels and several of the funds listed below be amended as follows. Under personal services, several funds are being adjusted for a downward adjustment of $10,964. For other expenses, again, several funds are being adjusted for a downward negative adjustment of $72,007. For a grand total supplemental appropriation decrease in the amount of $82,971. Section 2, this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period provided by law. And this is a recurring thing we do to true up our budget to actual. I think the biggest thing here is the water fund being adjusted for the Upper Hillside project moving into 2018 versus 2017. So this is a good adjustment to have a negative adjustment. Nothing is increasing on a net basis, but again, we're basically deferring $102,000 into 2018.
Yeah, that pretty much summarizes it. If anyone has any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for our city manager? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve ordinance number 2017-6?
Motion to approve.
May I have a second?
Second.
And roll call.
Motion by Mr. McGill to adopt ordinance number 2017-6 and ordinance amending ordinance 2016-14 to adjust the City of Bellbrook appropriations for 2017 to reflect additional cost in some line items and reduced cost in other line items, seconded by Mr. Schweller. Mr. McGill?
Yes.
Mr. Schweller?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mayor Baird?
Yes. Moving on, introduction of ordinances. Ordinance number 2017-7. An ordinance, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance number 2017-7, an ordinance approving a solid waste and recyclable material collection and disposal contract with Rumpke of Ohio, Inc. Whereas the City of Bellbrook participated in the 2017 Southwest Ohio Regional Refuse Consortium invitation to bid for the collection, transportation, and delivery of disposal or processing of residential solid waste and recycled materials. And whereas the city's current contract with Rumpke of Ohio, Inc. expires on December 31st, 2017, and whereas competitive bids for a 5-year contract were opened on June 29th, 2017,
and Rumpke of Ohio, Inc. was the lowest and best bidder. And whereas the majority, or the monthly price per residential unit for unlimited solid waste collection service will be $10.13, and the monthly price per residential unit for weekly recycling collection service will be $2.89 for a period of 5 years. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby ordains, Section 1, that the bid of Rumpke, Ohio, Inc. is hereby accepted. Section 2, that the city manager is hereby authorized to enter into a contract with Rumpke, Ohio, Inc. effective January 1st, 2018, according to the specifications set forth by the Southwest Ohio Regional Refuse Consortium, and take such other actions as required. Section 3, that this ordinance shall take effect and be in force from and after the earliest period provided by law.
Yes, as the ordinance said here, the city participated in a bidding process with 4 other communities. The cities of Miamisburg and Brookville were also full participants. The city of West Carrollton only bid their recycling as part of this. Ultimately, there was only 1 bid that was received. The other 2 prominent companies decided not to submit a bid. But in the end, I believe we got a competitive contract here. It's a 5-year contract. It locks in the price for all 5 years. It is an increase over what we are paying today. It's about a 6% increase, but then it's flat for the other 4 years after that. So I think this is a good deal. There was a companion bidding process going on in Cincinnati, and actually they ended up getting higher prices, particularly on the recycling, than we did. So I think our prices are very competitive. And we will have a public hearing at the next meeting, but we will recommend going forward with this for a 5-year period and lock in our contract rates here.
And it's approximately $13 a month?
We charge residents $13. What the combination of the $10.13 and the $2.89, and then Greene County charges us it's $10 per ton. It equates to 83 cents per month per resident. For their solid waste services, so it ends up being $13.85. We do have enough of a balance in the fund that we won't have to raise that rates for at least 1 or 2 years to compensate for that difference. So, but what we will be charged is $13.85. What we'll continue to charge the resident is $13 per month.
And that's a pretty good rate. Now, this is only introduction. We can talk about this further at the public hearing, but $13 a month or even $14 compared to, it's quite impressive.
And we don't have to change vendors.
And we don't have to change vendors.
Which is another good thing. That's, if we had to, we would, but I think we get very few complaints about Rumpke here at the city. Occasionally they'll miss a stop along the way. Occasionally they'll, in the summertime, get started a little too early in the morning, but other than that, they're very responsive. Once we make them aware of that, they will come back and assess that. But they've been a good contractor for us.
The collection day doesn't change, still Friday?
Collection day is still Friday, so that does not change. Really, there's, to the end user, there'll literally be no change because the rate won't change, the hauler won't change, anything won't change. So they'll still get to keep their same recycling bins. They have the option to rent toters from Rumpke directly if that's what they choose to do.
Okay.
And I've noticed I've got a couple elderly neighbors 4 or 5 doors down, and it seems like they always forget to bring them down. They've been going up and getting them.
Oh, have they?
So
this is like I said, it's actually a subcontractor of Rumpke that does the hauling, but they're responsive directly to Rumpke, and they're very good with the job they do.
So may I have a motion to approve the introduction of ordinance number 2017-7?
I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance number 2017-7.
May I have a second?
Second.
And roll call.
Motion by Mr. Edwards to introduce ordinance number 2017-7, an ordinance approving a solid waste and recyclable material collection and disposal contract with Rumpke of Ohio Incorporated. Seconded by Mr. McGill. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. McGill?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Schweller?
Yes. Mayor
Baird?
Yes. Moving on, we have a few resolutions this evening. We'll start with Resolution 2017-V. Mrs. Seeger Lawson.
Yes, resolution number 2017-V, a resolution designating a public depositor, Key Bank National Association of Active and Interim Deposits of the City of Bellbrook. Whereas Key Bank National Association is eligible for designation as a public depositor of active and inactive deposits of the city. And whereas it's the determination of council that the bank may be designated as a depositor for the active and interim funds of the city, with said designation to be confirmed by the execution of a depository agreement with the city. And whereas state law authorizes the granting of depository agreements for a period of up to 5 years. And whereas Key Bank is requesting to replace the existing depository agreement with a revised depository agreement permitting participation in the Ohio Pooled Collateral Program administered by the Office of the Treasurer of the State of Ohio. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby resolves, Section 1, that Key Bank National Association is hereby designated as official depositor for the active and interim funds of the City of Bellbrook pursuant to Section 135.10 of the Ohio Revised Code and subject to the execution of a formal depository agreement. Section 2, that the depository agreement will be in effect from February 1st, 2016 until February 1st of 2021. Section 3, that upon execution of depository agreement, the Director of Finance is hereby authorized to deposit active and interim funds of the city in said bank. Section 4, that this resolution shall take effect and be enforced forthwith.
Yes, Key Bank recently approached us because the treasurer of the state of Ohio has implemented a new program called the Ohio Pooled Collateral Program. Right now, the banks are required to pledge collateral to guarantee our deposits. So every dollar that we have on hand, they have to pledge 102 to 105% of other securities to secure that money. The treasurer has come up with a program to basically pool all that together and make it easier for the banks to do that. What he found were banks were not participating in public deposits because the collateral system was too difficult, too unwieldy, and it was too onerous on the bank. So he's come up with a program that basically takes that place. And what this does is amend our existing depository agreement with Key Bank to allow them to participate in that program on our behalf.
And that's why it starts February 1st of 16.
Right, we had approved it, it's just a 5-year term, so this is really just, it's more of an amendment, but it's replacing the whole item.
Any questions for our city manager? If not, may I have a motion to adopt resolution 2017-B?
I move that we adopt resolution number 2017-V.
May I have a second?
Second.
And roll call.
Motion by Mrs. Seeger Lawson to adopt Resolution 2017-V, a resolution designating a public depositor, Key Bank National Association of Active and Interim Deposits of the City of Bellbrook, seconded by Mr. Schweller. Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Schweller?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
I'll need to abstain as Key Bank is my employer.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mr. McGill?
Yes.
Mayor Baird?
Yes. Moving on, resolution 2017-W. Mr. McGill.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution number 2017-W, a resolution declaring the official intent and reasonable expectation of the City of Bellbrook on behalf of the State of Ohio, and the borrower, to reimburse its water fund for the Upper Hillside Water Main Improvement Project, loan number CK15U, with the proceeds of tax-exempt debt of the State of Ohio. Whereas the City of Bellbrook applied for a loan from the Ohio Public Works Commission for a portion of the costs of the Upper Hillside Water Main Improvement Project, and whereas the city intends to pay for certain items using monies from the water fund with the expectation that these monies will be reimbursed from the OPWC loan. Now, therefore, the City of Bellbrook, on behalf of the State of Ohio, hereby resolves, Section 1, that the City of Bellbrook reasonably expects to receive reimbursement for the project named Upper Hillside Water Main Improvements as set forth in Appendix A of the project agreement, with the proceeds of bonds to be issued by the State of Ohio. Section 2, that the maximum aggregate principal amount of bonds other than for costs of insurance expected to be issued by the State of Ohio for reimbursement to the local subdivision is $290,000. Section 3, that the clerk of the City of Bellbrook is hereby directed to file a copy of this resolution with the City of Bellbrook for the inspection and examination of all persons interested therein, and to deliver a copy of the resolution to the Ohio Public Works Commission. Section 4, that the city of Bellbrook finds and determines that all formal actions of this city concerning and relating to the adoption of this resolution were taken in an open meeting of the city of Bellbrook, and that all deliberations of this city and its committees that resulted in those formal actions were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements. And Section 5, that this resolution take effect and be enforced forthwith.
Yeah, that was a lot. So for this Upper Hillside Water Main Improvement Project, the city received a combination of a grant and a loan from the Ohio Public Works Commission. The grant was for $600,000. The loan was for $290,000. Typically, what we do as a city is we'll sign a contract with the contractor. We will actually pay the contractor ourselves and then seek reimbursement from Ohio Public Works Commission. Because of this loan portion and the fact that we're reimbursing ourselves, the state is requiring that we pass this legislation, and it's part of their bond covenants that when they're issuing that debt out there, I'm sure there's some statement in there saying that they can't loan it back to themselves or to one of their entities without having this type of action taken. So it's really just clarifying. It changes nothing about the project or the financing of the project. It's just allowing the state to reimburse the city. The other avenue would be the contractor could get paid directly from the state. It gets a little, the contractors don't like that because the state doesn't pay, they pay pretty timely, but it gets difficult, and they generally will get two checks because 84% will come from the Ohio Public Works Commission, the other 16% will come from the city. So it gets a little, they're not as keen on that. So we generally pay the bill and then get reimbursed by the state of Ohio. So this will allow us to do that when it comes to the $290,000 portion that is loan as opposed to grant.
And that loan rate's at 0%.
0% for the
So-
life of, for 30 years or the life of the
So
project.
essentially, we're paying 290, getting a 0% loan for that, and the rest is grants from the state, and this smooths out the transition with the contractor to pay them directly through us.
Exactly.
Any questions on council? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt resolution 2017-W?
Motion to adopt, Mayor.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Mr. McGill to adopt Resolution 2017-W, a resolution declaring the official intent and reasonable expectation of the City of Bellbrook on behalf of the State of Ohio, the borrower, to reimburse its water fund for the Upper Hillside Water Main Improvement Project, loan number CK15U, with the proceeds of tax-exempt debt of the State of Ohio, seconded by Mr. Schweller. Mr. McGill?
Yes.
Mr. Schweller?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mayor Baird?
Yes. Moving on, resolution 2017-X. Mr. Greenwood.
Thank you, Mayor. A resolution directing the Greene County Auditor to enter the delinquent cost of weed and grass mowing on the tax duplicate for the properties attached hereunto. Whereas the City of Bellbrook, following all applicable procedures contained in the Bellbrook Municipal Code, caused overgrown grass and weeds to be cut on properties located in the City of Bellbrook, and whereas Bellbrook Municipal Code Section 678.03B authorizes delinquent costs of such action to be certified to the Greene County Auditor to be entered upon the tax duplicate, and whereas the collection of such delinquent costs are in the best interest of the city and its citizens. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby resolves. Section 1, that the costs have been incurred for the mowing of grass and weeds that have not been paid by the property owners is $462.50. That the costs incurred shall be entered on the tax duplicate for the attached hereto. Section 3, that this resolution shall take effect and be enforced forthwith. I just have a question. That's for this year?
They're, anytime since we last assessed them, I think we actually, council did some in January, so it is mostly this year. We've got to wait till it's past due by 30 days, so it's up through probably July is when the mowings took place for these properties that are, the two properties that are listed here.
If they continue this year, if you have to mow again?
We'll
Catch 'em up.
catch up like in January at the end of
Okay.
the mowing season. We'll pass another one. We used to only do this once a year, and the problem there was then if the property changed hands, then we didn't like assessing weed
The
mowing
new-
to a new owner, like, welcome to Bellbrook, here's your bill type thing. So, but this way, by doing it, like, we try to do it twice a year.
Okay.
And then we catch most of the people as long as they're still the owner of record. A lot of these are either they're in foreclosure, and so whoever the owner may be, it may be a bank, or it could be it's still in their name. The bank's just dealing with it. So
Okay.
the list has gotten much shorter over the last few years than it was just a few years
Yeah,
ago.
it's pretty impressive. We only
Yeah.
have two, where
Yeah.
we used to have a
We used
lot
to
more
have-
than that.
Yeah,
So-
and both of these I think were just single mowings. Usually it was 3, 4, or 5 invoices that
Yeah.
were compiled up. So
Yeah.
Mr. Slaycock, have they gone through the property maintenance hearing process?
well, for this for mowing they would not necessarily do that because we'll go out and we have the ability through the ordinance. If we see that it's high, we give them public notice, and then we'll assess them. If mowing is the only issue that they have. If they have other issues, then they'll go through the property maintenance and the property review commission and things of that nature.
Okay,
But for mowing, we can handle that ourselves without having to go through that process.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for our city manager? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt resolution 2017-X?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 2017-X.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Was Mr. Edwards first?
Yes. And roll call.
Motion by Mr. Greenwood to adopt Resolution 2017-X, a resolution directing the Greene County Auditor to enter the delinquent cost of weed and grass mowing on the tax duplicate for the properties attached hereto, seconded by Mr. Edwards. Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. McGill?
Yes,
Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Schweller?
Yes.
Mayor Baird?
Yes. Moving on, resolution 2017-Y. Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution number 2017-Y, a resolution approving the replat of lot number 3C into lots number 37A and 3D Highview Terrace subdivision, section 1. Whereas the Ohio Revised Code requires a replat for changes of lot lines or easements in a platted subdivision, and whereas the City of Bellbrook's consulting engineer and the Bellbrook Planning Board have recommended approval of a replat of lot number 3C into lots 37A and 3D, Highview Terrace subdivision, section 1, and whereas the City of Bellbrook subdivision regulations stipulate changes to be a recorded plat shall be approved by action of the Bellbrook City Council. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby resolves, section 1, that the replat of lot 3C into lots 37A and 3D, Highview Terrace subdivision, section 1 is hereby approved for recording purposes. Section 2, that the mayor and clerk of council are authorized to affix their signature to the revised record plan. Section 3, that this resolution shall take effect and be enforced forthwith.
Yes, the thing, if you think we've talked about this before, we have actually. So this is, we're going back at this. So this area here, this was all Lot 3C. Actually, Lot 3C used to go down even further here. And Lot 3C was originally approved by Sugar Creek Township. This was the part of the land that was not in the city when Highview Terrace was first proposed. So 3C started in the township, and then it was annexed. And slowly but surely, we've platted lots off this. So in December, January, the planning board and council took action to take Lot 3C and divide it into 37A, 38A, 39A. It was actually 4 lots, but the developer has a buyer that is interested, obviously, in a larger lot. So that is what is coming before, to take what was here and make this would have been 2 lots, and now it's going to be a single lot just at 2 acres. It's hard to read on this, but up in this upper corner, the driveway for this existing lot 36A actually cuts onto that property. There's an easement, ingress and egress easement for that property owner, but the house will be there. Lot 3D could either stay as this 2-acre lot, or they may split it again into 2 lots. I can't imagine it'd be any more than 2 lots, but they have a buyer for 37A. This is right at the entrance to Highview Terrace here. So with your approval, they'll be able to record this replat and sell this lot, and we'll see another house going up there, I'm sure.
It'll be fun to develop.
Yes, it
Build.
will. Yes, it will. It's
That's probably another reason they're making it
It's
bigger.
steep on that
So it's
hillside
steep,
there.
but it could be pretty neat.
yes.
So, any questions on council? This has been through the planning board already for their approval, and sort of makes more sense to have bigger lots anyway. So,
Yeah.
especially in that particular area.
Yes.
Seeing no questions, may I have a motion to adopt resolution 2017-Y?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 2017-Y.
I'll second it.
Roll call.
Motion by Mr. Edwards to adopt Resolution 2017-Y, a resolution approving the replat of Lot 3C into lots 37A and 3D, Highview Terrace subdivision, Section 1. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mr. McGill?
Yes.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Schweller?
Yes.
Mayor Baird?
Yes. One more resolution this evening, resolution 2017-AA. Mr. McGill.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution number
We skipped
2017-AA,
over.
a resolution directing the Greene County Auditor to enter the delinquent cost of unpaid water bills on the tax duplicate for the properties attached here too. Whereas the City of Bellbrook, following all applicable procedures contained in the Bellbrook Municipal Code, invoice customers for providing water to properties located in the City of Bellbrook's water system area, and whereas Bellbrook Municipal Code, Section 1042.05, authorizes unpaid water bills to be certified to the Greene County Auditor to be entered upon the tax duplicate, and whereas the collection of such delinquent costs are in the best interests of the city and its citizens, now therefore the City of Bellbrook hereby resolves, Section 1, that the costs that have been incurred for providing water that have not been paid by the property owners is $367.78. Section 2, that the costs incurred shall be entered on the tax duplicate for the properties attached here too. And Section 3, that this resolution shall take effect and be enforced forthwith. And there's an attachment that lists the identified property owners that have unpaid bills.
Yes, very similar to the weed mowing. This list has gotten much shorter. A lot of that is we will shut off water now in a much more timely manner for unpaid bills. Each one of these has a unique situation where shutting off the water is not an option because there's a dual service or there's something else going on there. So we can't always shut off the water. So ultimately, if they don't pay, we'll assess it to the property and they'll pay it. In each of these 4 cases, the property is still owned by the same individual, so we'll get our money eventually. They'll just have to pay, on top of the penalty we assess, the county assesses a fee to collect these for us, but if that's how they want to pay it, we'll get our money eventually.
Any questions? The only issue I have with this has always been just a little bit is sometimes the renters and the, are these all property owners?
These are all property
Well,
owners.
that's good. So, seeing no,
Yeah. Well, do you have an automatic process where you send the property owner a letter if the tenants aren't paying?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah, they will get a copy, particularly when there's a delinquent notice and then a shut-off notice, the owners will get a copy of that.
Okay.
Yes.
any other questions on council? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt resolution 2017-AA?
Motion to accept it.
May I have a second?
Second.
And roll call.
Motion by Mr. McGill to adopt Resolution 2017-AA, a resolution directing the Greene County Auditor to enter the delinquent cost of unpaid water bills on the tax duplicate for the properties attached hereto, seconded by Mrs. Seeger Lawson. Mr. McGill?
Yes.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mr. Schweller?
Yes.
Mayor Baird?
Yes. And that is it for the resolutions. I know some of you probably are looking at me going, why did we skip one? Resolution Z was pulled off. That is going to have to go back to the planning board and they're going to take another look at that. So that will come back sometime in the future.
That was at the request of the developer.
That was at the request of the developer, not us. So normally I probably would have messed it up, but I actually did not tonight. Moving on, we do have a city manager's report.
Yes, a couple items for you this evening. The first, hopefully everyone's noticed the improvements we've made to the Main and Franklin intersection. Just over the past several weeks, a couple of things we did. With number one, we added a left turn arrow. So when you're going eastbound on Franklin to northbound on Main, there's a left turn arrow there. We extended this queuing lane here. You can see we're on here where that is. We extended that back almost to the entrance to the gas station there. So instead of 3 cars, you can probably get 6 or 7 cars in there. And then the other thing, for each of the legs of the intersection, if you look up on there's actually light poles and there's little square units up there. Those are actual radar units that will detect traffic. So now, if there's traffic coming, if there's a lot of traffic on eastbound because it's that time of day, it'll detect it and it will actually lengthen the time that light stays green until that traffic clears up to a maximum amount. It's not endless. It's 45 seconds. It may seem endless if you're going one of the other ways, but the 45 seconds is the max. But then if it senses no traffic, then it'll cycle through. And then really, if probably like right now where there's not a lot of traffic, the signal is actually controlled by the PED crossings. That's the time that it takes for it to go walk, don't walk, and then that's when it'll cycle through just on a normal cycle. But those units will detect. They detect whether somebody's in this turn lane. That's what triggers the arrow will only go on if somebody's in that turn lane. They also detect for this turn lane here. This one's a little more difficult. It's a very narrow. So sometimes if you have a large truck or something in the through lane, it'll trigger that turn arrow. But again, it's a very short turn arrow, so that's not a big deal. But hopefully, we've probably made this intersection as efficient as we can get, given the constraints that we have with buildings and limited paving and things like that. I mean, unless you could add lanes, that's about the only other thing you could do to make that more efficient. So if anyone experiences anything that doesn't seem right, please let me know, because it's new. We've talked to the signal installer just last week. We made some tweaks to the timing, but there's other things we can do if something doesn't seem to be working quite right for a certain time of the day. But hopefully with the lengthening of this turn lane, we can get traffic through. We can get the left turns, at least 6 or 7 cars through the turn fairly quickly, and make it the best that we can. So
Mark, what'd that cost? Like, was that 35,000 you said?
it was close to 35,000 by the time all was said and done. It was about 28,000 for the signal work and about 6,000 for the striping work. They had to. Once that's repaved, it'll look much better. That's not for several years. It
Right.
was hard to get that old striping off, but that's why we paid a contractor to do that. They actually came in with
Right.
not a power washer, but it's a heavy duty power washer to get that off. So yeah, it did that, but I think that was money well spent to improve this intersection to the extent we could.
It's a nice improvement.
Mark,
Yes.
did you use any kind of statistics or anything to see if this is actually an improvement, or do you have anything to base on? Just kind of like how it feels, or?
No, just based on our knowledge of that intersection.
Okay.
During the day, the service department is through there multiple times a day. So we knew what the biggest issue was turning north onto Main Street there. The other thing, I think sometimes traffic coming westbound, once the soccer practice or whatever else is done down there, and that's what those radar units will also detect. Every time it senses a car, it adds a half second on to the length of the signal. So if there's cars coming through, it's going to lengthen that up until it senses a gap that it's able to slow it down. So we didn't have any true data, but I think it's just watching and knowing how that traffic flows through there at certain times. That's what makes it difficult. It wasn't always just the going eastbound to northbound. I mean, there's times that's the worst thing, but then there's other times that it's westbound going through, or it's southbound going to westbound. So it's just sort of watching it, and that's why if somebody experiences something that they have to wait for an inordinate amount of time, I would appreciate letting us know, and we'll watch it a little closer.
I don't know when you took that picture, but there's not a lot of traffic there.
No, that's
what time of day is
yeah. Yeah, that's probably from a while ago.
Forrest, I can through there quite a bit in the evening, and a lot of times if there's a practice going on, there may be one car turning left per cycle.
Yeah.
And then there's still, 65 million cars coming right at you again, so one more, and so.
Yeah, that should help.
Yeah, that's the hope, so. Another item, I talked with Barry Tiffany from Sugar Creek Township. The township would like to have another joint meeting with the city, invite the schools and the park district again, but we came on a date of September 25th, which is the night of our regular meeting here. We thought we could do it either here, depending on how many people, we could either do it right in this room beforehand, and then, be done at 10 till 7 or something, and then have our regular meeting afterwards. So I assume because it's our regular meeting night, there would not really be any conflicts with that, other than, probably starting it at 6 or 5:45 or something like that. So if you're acceptable, I'll get back to the township, and then we'll contact the schools and the park district. And
Better for us than to add another meeting in the
Well,
month,
right,
because
that's-
usually when we meet with them, we meet their meeting time.
Right,
so-
at their meeting, they're on the
so
other
that's
Monday
another-
nights, yes.
That's another meeting, so.
In my memo to you, I gave you an update on the library. So for those of you who may not know, the library building is owned by the city. I can't say it's always been owned by the city. It was actually owned by the township before the split back in the 80s. When that split occurred, the city ended up with the library as our property. The library has always been a tenant. There's never been a formal relationship of tenant-landlord relationship, but we've always handled it that way. They've been very satisfied with what we do to provide updates. Unfortunately, in the middle of last winter, there was a significant HVAC issue in that building. We were able to make enough repairs to get them through. It was a mild winter last year, so it was a little easier to do. But now we know that those systems there's actually 2 systems there. They need to be replaced. It costs about $25,000 to replace those. I talked with the library director, and although they normally do not share in those type of costs because they view themselves as the tenant, they are willing to contribute $8,000 towards the cost of that because of some of the other things we've done that a normal landlord would not do. We did the lighting in there, which they pay the utility bill, so they're actually saving on the lighting. We've replaced carpet. I don't know how long ago that's been, but many years ago. So they've agreed to make a contribution towards the replacement of the HVAC. So we are going to move forward with that to get that installed before it's needed this winter. There was a cracked heat exchanger, I believe, in there, so it's not something that you could do long term. And then right now I have a lease agreement being reviewed by our municipal attorney. It's one they've used for other communities. We are the only community that doesn't have a lease arrangement with them. So we'll get that reviewed, and then that will come back before council at a future time. But I just wanted council to know what's going on with that. So that effective $17,000 is not something we had budgeted for the library, but we'll make that work in the budget as necessary.
Don't forget, you might be able to get a rebate from Vectren or DPL.
Oh, okay.
HVAC system.
Yep.
Depending on what it is.
Yep.
Okay.
Depending on what efficiency they put in.
They
Are they
would
doing
do-
air conditioner or just furnaces?
I think just furnaces.
Well, we'll talk about it.
There you
Yep.
go.
Thanks.
So yeah, that's good. We'll look into that too if there's something we can do. And then the final thing I had tonight is about the property tax levy. So I just wanted to. That is on the ballot, obviously, in November. Council talked about that on many occasions here. So we had a fact sheet that we put up on our website. We put it out in the newsletter, things like that. I wanted to provide a little bit more detail this evening, and then we will, based on council input, we will put that information on the website also as we just begin to provide as much information as we can about this levy. So it is a 3 mil 5-year property tax levy. It is a general fund levy, but it's predominantly for public safety services. It will generate just over $500,000 per year. It'll cost a property owner $8.75 per month or $105 per year for each $100,000 in valuation. So if you have a $200,000 home, you can just double those costs there. What is this levy going to be used for? The biggest thing is the cuts that we've had from the state of Ohio. That has cost us almost $250,000 a year in revenue. If those cuts had not been made, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation, or the levy wouldn't be nearly as large as it is if we had been getting that money. The other component to this is back in the 2007-8, interest rates were in the 5 and 6% range. We were getting $170,000 a year in interest, and I know one year we got less than $10,000 a year. So that's just another component to the recession that has had a significant impact on our budget. So that structural deficit that we've talked about at council on multiple occasions is right now right around $300,000 per year going out in the 5-year forecast. The other things that this levy will be used for, it's going to add 1 full-time firefighter. What this will allow us to do is put 2 full-time firefighters on every 24-hour shift. We are having problems hiring and retaining part-time firefighters. There's a lot of departments that are hiring full-time firefighters, so it's hard to get paramedics on a part-time basis. So,
and Mark, on that, I think, that, I don't know how you best communicate it. We're not adding a fireman. We're replacing part-timers with a full-timer, essentially.
right, but we
There will be a little more time with the
yeah,
part-timer.
right. And what we're trying to do is provide the coverage that a full-timer provides, that we can guarantee that on every shift there's 2 full-timers 24/7 around the clock.
Yep.
We plan to add a full-time police officer to the current staff. Primarily that we're not going to add a school resource officer. We're going to add a position, and then we will have a school resource officer position created. The schools have requested a full-time officer for their facilities within the city. So that will allow us to do that. During the non-school time, what that will do is cut down on the amount of overtime we have, because we can shift that officer to a shift in the summertime, and then they can cover for vacations and things like that, where we would have to cover it with either part-timers or overtime during the summer. So that's going to cost about $85,000 per year. And then the other component is we're going to designate some of the funds for improvements to the downtown area. I know we've talked about that. With the walkability study, I think we found a lot of things. We've done a few of those things, even though it's not walkability, but the improvement to the intersection, I think, is a big improvement. The intersection at West Street and Franklin Street, we've redone those crosswalks, put more paint in there with the trying to designate that as a crossing area a little bit more. So there's things like that we can do. $25,000 isn't a ton of money, but it will allow us to do things. It'll make improvements to sidewalks where they need to be, maybe allow us to do some type of lighting, or at least in a phased-in approach over the years. So we want to designate a portion of the levy to the downtown. Just some other things just to consider as people are contemplating whether or not to vote for this levy. Obviously, we don't have a municipal income tax, so if you live here and you work in a township or an non-municipal area, or if you live in the city of Beaver Creek or up at the base, you're not paying 2%, 2.5% to those communities. Our water rates have not been increased since 2011. We've been able to maintain those rates. If we had just increased it at 2%, which is probably fairly low given some of the other communities in the surrounding area, what they've done, that would be another $40 per year that residents would have to spend. Our waste collection rates have actually decreased from $17 to $13, so that's another $48 per year that we're saving our residents over the past several years. So we're hoping these are reasons that somebody would consider voting for this levy. And everyone gets their property taxes; they know what they pay. But for $100,000 property value, only $561 of that property tax bill comes to the city, and that's for your police, your fire, zoning, property maintenance. Our street improvements come out of that, stormwater improvements, the museum, library, as we just talked about. All that comes out of that $561 per year. The rates have not changed since 2011. That's when we passed a replacement levy, and we've not asked for additional money since 2009. So it's been 8 years since we've done that. And then the other thing that has taken place in that time is we consolidated our dispatch with Greene County, Sugar Creek Township, saving at least $125,000 annually. It's probably much more than that. It's hard to show what you wouldn't have spent on the technology side. I know that's an area now that is significant. And I know even the state has passed something that said we would have had to have 2 dispatchers on full-time, which would have been an enormous cost to us to do that. So that's just one more thing that we've done to try to save as much of the taxpayers' dollars as we can. Finally, some of the impacts to the community. We're trying to keep the high-quality services, keep everything up to date. Council has been willing to replace items as they need to replace so that we have the equipment and the things necessary to do the job. But we want to invest in that safety equipment, personnel, community programs. I think what the chief provided to you earlier is an example of that, of trying to offer programs that are relevant to our residents, that are needed by our residents. We're able to do that because of the tax dollars we get. We want to maintain the quality of life, low crime rate, quick responses by our fire and EMS personnel. Obviously protect property values. Anyone who owns a property appreciates that. I think it's safe to say that if you put your house up for sale in Bellbrook, it's going to sell pretty quickly. And a lot of that's to do with the schools, but I think it's also the services provided by the city. And then we'd like to attract businesses and visitors to downtown Bellbrook. I know I just heard today that the building on the corner that the uniform place used to be just sold to somebody new that is willing to come in, and they're going to do some upgrades to that building. So things like that, I think, will be nice to add to the downtown area. So those are really, I guess, the talking points, so to speak. We will put this information, maybe a little bit more detailed information, up on the website also. Encourage anyone who has questions about the levy and the need for it or the reasons behind it to contact us. Contact anyone on council. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer it too. For councils, we will send out a postcard similar to we did for previous levies. Probably send that out in late September, early October. Early voting starts October 11th, I believe, is when it is. So we'll get that out. I was anticipating having some type of town hall public meetings sometime, probably in that same time frame. At least advertise them. Either we'll put it on the postcard, depending on the timing, or just advertise them on the web and get them out. But have meetings available so anyone who wants to come in and ask questions. We will probably specifically invite some of the businesses to one of those meetings just to get their input. Although the businesses may not have a vote, a lot of them are residents, and they do communicate with a lot of residents. So we'd like to make sure that they understand what our needs are and the reasons for doing this. So we want to do that. And then I think probably the only other thing is there probably needs to be some type of levy committee to advocate for this, at least to be able to purchase signs and do things like that. Those are things that the city can't do with tax dollars. So that probably needs to be formed here in the relative near future to facilitate getting that done.
Nice presentation.
With that, I think that's all I have.
Mark has a good presentation, and a couple things I'd emphasize on the levy is a lot of people aren't aware of the fact, or they don't remember the fact that we have no income tax in Bellbrook, and that's because they're paying someplace else instead of them. They're still paying a local income tax, just that we're not getting any, and there's, 300 cities or something in Ohio, and there's only 4 that don't have an income tax. So that's kind of a rarity, and that's not the norm at all. The other thing is, a lot of folks don't focus on the fact that when that real estate tax bill comes, Bellbrook gets about 22% of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real key. Like 56 or 57, if I remember, goes to the schools. That's a lion's share of that money. So we get just a small sliver of that overall pie. And then you did mention about some of the state, taxes that have been basically either repealed or put the tax rate down to 0. One of the ones that a lot of people were surprised about was the estate tax. And while I'm not a big advocate for the estate tax in Ohio, when Bellbrook had it in place, we budgeted usually $10,000 to maybe $15,000 in revenue. In several years, we got in excess of $200,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just all rainy day fund money, and that's the best way to get it, to be honest with you. But that was a big hit to Bellbrook that a lot of folks weren't aware of. But the estate tax did give us a nice kick to pay for some additional projects or something like that, some additional funding on a year-to-year basis.
Yes.
I think the most telling statistic is the fact that it's been 9 years since we've had any sort of levy on the ballot.
Yes.
And if you think, I can't think of anything that I paid for 9 years ago that's less now than it was 9 years ago.
Yeah.
So we've,
Good point.
I give a lot of credit to Mark and your team for you know, managing a budget that's not grown, that's shrunk, and, you know, taken 9 years to get to this point.
I think one of the things that people don't realize too is a volunteer system for fire departments. That's almost non-existent. Main reason is the training that has to be done. You can't, volunteers, you know, used to be able to go out and do a lot of things, but nowadays you have to be well-trained by law, and so that, and there's actually kind of a shortage of EMT personnel. And like Mark said, he has a hard time filling slots, you know, getting people to come in on, our part-timers, because, you know, they've got other places they can go or whatever, but, that's an issue too. I mean, it just costs more to have people, so.
Any other questions or comments on council?
Hey, Mark, just a couple of comments on the report. First off, I like the newsletter. This thing has continued to impress me, and it's come a long way since its early beginnings. And secondly, Ty, we've talked about the Upper Hillside project twice. I know we sent a letter out to residents. Have we had any real feedback on that?
No, I have not. I have not specifically. I've talked to a couple residents along the way. I anticipate that the engineer is still designing it. And back in the spring, Dale Wilson and I will actually walk with, and we walk where the water main's going. It's very difficult there because there's a lot of utilities in the ground and the existing water main that we have to maintain and things like that. I would, when the engineer completes their design, I think we will probably have another meeting.
Okay.
Actually offer a meeting. We'll send a
Did
letter.
we send a letter out and tell them it was coming?
Yeah, we did. We did.
Did we hear anything back from that at all?
No, no,
Okay.
no, but we'll keep them in, and then it will likely go to bid here towards the end of this year.
Okay.
The work will likely not take place until school is out next year, because unfortunately it's a one-way in, one-way out, and on that stretch where you come in there, it will be open. We'll have to keep it open, but it'll be down to one lane. You can't have school buses come in and out of there in one lane. So that's why it's a little bit longer delayed than I would hope. But the timing of it is such that we want to minimize the impact to the extent we can.
Okay, thanks.
On that same project, I've had some questions from people who live there. You're replacing a line from inside the house out, right?
It depends.
It depends?
It depends. So up there's a mixture of inside meters and outside meters. So the ones that are current outside meters in a pit, we are just going to replace to the pit
To the
there.
pit, okay.
Unless, and we've never found a lead service line in the city, but if in the uncovering of things we were to find a lead service line, then we would replace it to the house. But we don't anticipate that because we just haven't found those. For those with inside meters, we will probably have to, I believe we're going to replace the line up to the house and then tie into the existing line there. Because we have to put a new meter pit. We're going to make them all outside meters.
Okay.
So we'll put a pit in where there isn't one now, and then run a new line up to the house to tie into the existing plumbing of the house.
Because the people are concerned about, you know, they go to work and then somebody has to come in their house. And that's
Yeah, well-
that'd be extensive, if you know.
Right, and that's going to be where this is, the putting of the water main in is actually the easy part. It's going to be making
Right.
the connections to all the houses that are going to be difficult. For the ones with outside meters, it'll be much easier. But for those with the inside meters, we're going to have cooperation with those property owners to get in there to remove the meter out of there and put a connection in there where the meter existed, and then put the new meter on. So it's going to take some coordination, and we're going to do it methodically, I guess is the best way to say it, so that we don't get out ahead of ourselves and then encounter a problem that we weren't anticipating.
That shouldn't be, that should be fairly easy, I would think. Just taking a meter out and,
Yes, yeah, it's a very, if we can get in, it's
Yeah.
easy to do.
right.
The problem is, and you know, people have different work schedules and different way of getting messages and things like that. It's not easy, but we'll work with them. If it needs to be after hours, then we'll do that. The actual replacement of the water meters will be done by our staff. not by a contractor. Our
Okay.
staff will be doing that, so we'll coordinate that to the best we can. If we need to work different hours to accommodate somebody, we'll do that.
So our staff will take the meter out, put the fitting in to take its
Exactly.
place and all that?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions for our city manager? Seeing none, we'll move on to committee reports. Service,
Nothing from the service department.
safety,
None tonight, Mayor.
finance audit.
Nothing really to report, but I understand we're nearly done with the audit, or the audit's close to being done. I think the commitment date was August 31.
Right, and we're not gonna be done by then, I can tell you
Okay.
that. So, I think we've got maybe only 2 more review steps left or something like that, so we'll see.
All's going well, I trust, or?
Yeah,
Okay. Just their timeline, as
yeah.
always.
Always a little,
That's all
it's
for
their
now.
timeline, as long as, yeah.
Exactly.
And then no community affairs report tonight. Any old business on council? New business, we have one item. Ohio Division of Liquor, city received a notice of change of ownership. Tiki Thai Grill LLC to Thai Grill LLC. I think we all know where this is at. I'm assuming the police chief has no issues.
And actually, given the timing of this, it was due today, so we sent it back in and said there'd be no objection, so hopefully no one has any
Yeah.
objection there. But no, this is just a change of ownership. It's not a new liquor permit, it's just a transfer. So we assumed that it would be okay.
Well, and I haven't seen a lot of
No,
various things going on
no,
at
not
the
at the
Thai restaurant.
No.
Moving on, open discussion. Mr. Edwards,
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Forrest,
Went to the commissioners meeting in Sugar Creek Township. 2 issues that kind of affect us. The Resource Center, question was asked why they cut the funding. From what I got from their answer was the way the Resource Center was running wasn't in compliance with the law for giving that money out the way they were.
Yeah,
I didn't fully understand.
Yeah, there were some federal grants that were being used to run the Family Resource Center that the expenses weren't qualifying expenses for that grant. So that's the reason that the county, that's at least what they've said is why they eliminated the position and the funding for that completely.
But I didn't hear any, you would have thought maybe there was a chance to work that out or something. I didn't hear.
yeah, there. When this first happened, there was a lot of stuff going on, and we won't rehash it all now.
Right.
So you're sort of getting it on the very end of it.
Yeah.
So it was, yes, Greene County ended up cutting it. Yes, they said it was because essentially there were certain performance issues on number of people you reach and some other things, and I think there were some differences on how you actually count that. But it was also sort of clear that Jamestown's Family Resource Center was being closed down too. I don't know the specifics of that.
Right.
And it was clear the county, not only because of that reason, really no longer wanted to participate in those kinds of things. So we used to give money to them prior to the county involvement. I believe we then stopped giving them money. I believe we gave them $1,000 last year, and depending upon council's review next year, we'll decide what to do. Obviously, I think it's a great resource. That building now will have the Chamber of Commerce in there. So the chamber's going to be moving there to there. It's much cheaper. So there'll be multiple resources in there for the business people, and then plus all the clients they've seen. There's a lot more clients they see than you would think, and the food pantry and all those other things.
They do. Oh, the other thing, there was a group concerned with the floodplain and some issues with some of it being filled in. They're going to set up a workshop. They're going to email that out if anybody wants to attend that. So that's all I got.
Mr. McGill?
One comment to the city manager on the street paving program. Had an opportunity to view some various projects that they were working on in the streets in the area. Thought it was a very professional job. They got it done timely and controlled the traffic very well, and especially on the hard-fought areas like Possum Run
Mhm.
and that up there. So
They did
kudos.
that really quick.
Yes,
I mean, that was
yeah.
really.
It is
Yeah.
quite
that was
impressive.
really
They
good.
got delayed a couple
Yeah.
times getting started, but then once they came in, because they had to, on Possum Run, they actually milled it down and then they put the asphalt down. And yeah, I went through there a couple times while they were doing it, and they do very well with controlling the traffic and getting people through and things like that.
It's much better job, I thought, than prior contractors.
And just so, I'm glad you brought that up, on Possum Run, the striping has not been completed yet. There will be a yellow stripe down the middle, but then we are adding now fog lines, white lines on the edges there to try to narrow down, at least visually, that area to keep the speeds down a little bit along there.
Good.
So
Good.
we're waiting for, Greene County does our striping for us. We're waiting for them to come back, since they had done the rest of the city. Now they have to come back when they're able to.
Yeah, I was just totally surprised at how fast they got that paving job done.
Yes, yeah, they're very efficient.
What about putting like bike lanes or something? Should we like, I mean, since there's so much biking through the town, I mean, is there, instead of just, I don't know, ghosting it out or whatever, does it make sense to make it more of a bike lane?
That's something we'll look at that. We'll put it in, and if we can designate it as that. The problem is if it doesn't go anywhere else,
Anywhere else, right.
that might not be. I'll have to look at what the portion in Centerville up on Clio Road and that is, if it has anything.
And I don't know what the requirements are for width and things like
Right,
that. So.
right, yeah. I don't know, but it's probably going to be wide enough, as long as it can't be at too much of an angle down either, is the other consideration. You don't want to put a bike lane and then have it angled too much towards the gutter.
Right,
So
yeah.
we can look at that.
The other thing I was going to say in open discussion is that hopefully Harvey doesn't come this way, but the last time a big hurricane did come this way was Hurricane Ike, and I lived through that working at DPNL, and there was a lot of power outages and there were a lot of problems. I just want to make sure that, you know, everyone's kind of keeping an eye on that. Supposedly it's going to get here by this weekend or something. Hopefully it'll fizzle out before it gets here, but just in anticipation of that, and hopefully people are prepared for any kind of storm that might come through.
Mhm.
And is the city water system, is there anything else that we need to be, I don't know. We already got backup generators since the last
Right.
time.
Yeah, we have multiple backup generators for any of our buildings that we did not have in 2008. So our fire stations can operate, our well fields can operate. You know, we're on different grids there, so hopefully they don't all go down, but we can make it manage. This building has a generator, so we are in a much better position than we were in 2008 when that happened.
Mr. Wald?
Well, a comment I would have to what Forrest said, I was at the meeting with the county commissioners, and they said they're working feverishly to try to put their meetings on TV.
Yes.
So they've been working on that for 4 years now, but they said they're getting close to resolution, so we'll anxiously wait to see what that means. Their meetings, I don't think, and Bob, you probably know more about them, a lot of times their meetings are just expenditure authorizations. It's not a whole lot of discussion or anything like that, but I would love the transparency, and I would like to see maybe our school board jump on board with the same thing, so everybody can see what's going on. But-
And the township.
yeah, but the commissioners meet like at 1 o'clock or something
Yep,
during the
they
week
do.
on Wednesdays or something. And some of the meetings are 20 minutes and some of them are 2 hours, and they have goofy adjournments and recesses and things like that. So it's not gonna be exciting TV, but at least if there's something important or big coming on, we'll get a chance to watch it and watch it come across live, so.
Well, and any of those, whether it's the schools or the township or the county, if they ever get it to us, we can rebroadcast those on our channel here if,
Yep.
Great idea.
if we need to.
Yep.
So we're always looking for new content
New
on
content
there.
on
If,
Bellbrook
if anyone,
TV.
yes, if anyone wants to provide it.
They did make me feel bad when they said they primarily depend on their budget for sales tax, and they mentioned Amazon, shopping on Amazon.
Yeah.
Guaranteed that's not gonna change for a long time.
No.
I really don't have anything. I think Donna brings up a valid point now that we're seeing what's going on in Houston and Texas and how much of a potential disaster that can be. So hopefully all that will go as well as possible. We haven't heard of a lot of deaths yet, but hopefully it'll stay that way. So good luck to them. With that, it's open to the public for 5 minutes. If anyone would like to get up, you need to announce your name and your address.
Nina Herzog, 255 Upper Hillside Drive. So curious to find out if the flagging of the gas lines Sunday is for this water main update.
No, not that I'm aware of. No,
Okay.
it could be, but I don't believe so.
Okay.
Someone would have to look at the Ohio Utility
Yeah,
oops ticket to see
Okay.
who called it in.
It starts at, so it's not the whole plat. It's not Big 8 starting at Main. It starts at 165. It's only on the odd side of the street. and it goes from 165 down to Pine Grove.
Realistically, there's probably pretty good chances for engineering design, but no one really knows unless you looked at it. So anyone could essentially call that in and without looking at who ordered the OOPS ticket or Utility Protection Services ticket, you wouldn't know. Obviously, the gas line's only going to go down one side. There's not going to be two of them.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're going to be in the back of the yard too, so you may see it stop. Well, it could actually be in the backyard then, but without looking at it, I would imagine if the whole street's marked, it's either water or design for the water.
Yeah, they may have had to,
Realistically.
because they did that probably 6 months ago. They went out and marked everything. They may have had to.
That one they did mark, because I remember all the flags.
They may
up
have had to come
the
back
house
because they
and all that.
were confused.
But it was only the water then. This time it's just the gas. And the water, it was the whole,
Mhm.
but this is just, it specifically starts at 165 Upper Hillside. And it goes up to the houses that meet up with Pine Grove. So it's like, okay.
Don't know.
So it
It's
sounds
hard
like,
to
okay,
hard
well,
to
is that part of
speculate with
this
that.
unit? Like,
Dale could probably tell us.
Yeah,
but,
we can
we
find
wouldn't
out.
have that information, but we figured out.
Okay. Going back to Mr. Greenwood, being a Bellbrook resident since 1982, and going northbound off of 725, it is 1,000% improvement. Being able to have that turn lane and the extension, especially with school in session now, because if you come when they're picking up or dropping up kids up at the high school, junior high, of course now that they have all the elementary schools up there now, you could be waiting 10 minutes just to get through that, just to turn left, turn north. So it's like, yay, improvement there. So I love it, and I come through town, there are times when I'm like 6 in the morning, sometimes it's 11 o'clock at night. So, it's nice to see that improvement there. Going off of that, any information or any further discussion on Upper Hillside, southbound Main, and Tree?
Excuse me.
That area, that would probably be,
Ridgeway.
yeah, Ridgeway.
Ridgeway,
Comprehensive
yeah.
Yeah, it's that three-way that I know
Yeah.
months ago that I had discussed that, that nobody, when they're coming southbound on Main, if somebody's trying to turn turn left out of Upper Hillside, they won't give enough of a time frame to let that person turn at all. So I've actually been like sneaking in myself. So I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'm not waiting for 20 cars to go through. I'm gonna find someone who's not really on the ball and sneak in. But once again, now that school's starting, it could be with the dropping. You could take forever just to get up, because you guys know, you mentioned it before. It's one way in, one way out. You're stuck.
We've looked at, I've heard that from multiple residents up there, but there's just, we have increased the enforcement at the stop sign coming southbound, because we also heard that people were not really stopping there. So we've increased some of the police enforcement there to try to help from that standpoint. But given the geography of the place there, it's very difficult to do much of anything because of the hill and the proximity to Ridgeway and everything else. It's we continue to look for something, but I'm not sure what we can do.
Well, and like I said this in the past at a different city meeting. I'm not talking about northbound. I know there's in the winter, northbound's going to be able to stop and start again. Northbound, I'm not concerned about. You can usually find, a spot. What I had suggested was to do what is there on Possum and Little Sugar Creek. Make it a three-way stop.
A three-way stop. What would be
Ridgeway,
Ridgeway and southbound?
Southbound Main, and Upper Hillside.
Okay.
Because you can see all 3 points at all 3 stop signs.
Oh, I mean, that'd be,
But you'd have a stop sign at
Well, they're already stop signs.
Big Tree though, and then you'd have another stop sign the very next street.
Well, at the top of the hill, it's Ridgeway and that is a two-way stop.
yeah.
But if Upper Hillside it's not lined up, I think is the problem.
Right.
I mean, it's not a true, I mean, it's farther to the south, so that
Well, neither is Little Sugar Creek at Possum Run. It's set further back.
Little Sugar Creek at Possum Run. That
So,
three,
so
yeah.
if you're going
Oh,
southbound on
the
Little Sugar
three-way
Creek,
there.
so
Yeah.
if you're coming southbound on Little Sugar
Yeah.
Creek, it doesn't meet up. It does exactly what Upper Hillside Main does. It's a little bit set back, and that's a three-way stop.
We'll have to look at that. I think it's probably a little bit different than that one because those are the only three. That's more of I view that as more of a Y as opposed to straight lines. But it's something we can have the engineer look at and see if there's something we can do with that. Without stopping northbound traffic, I don't know how you would have to stop northbound traffic to do that. You would really have to make it a four-way stop to do that. If you made a four-way where northbound stopped at Upper Hillside, southbound stopped at Ridgeway, Ridgeway stopped in Upper Hillside, then you'd have a true four-way stop.
Yeah, I don't. You have
But
those real long there's one in Xenia that
Traffic.
drives me nuts.
Yes, yeah, with the
and
signal
you know what I'm
there.
talking about
Yeah.
on whatever is Second or Upper Bell,
Yeah,
Yeah, where it
You
comes
know.
into Xenia there.
but
yeah.
as long as we're taking a look at it.
Yeah, we'll continue to look. I
Yeah,
know.
it's just the fact that, you can have like 20 cars go through, going south, and with the additional development in Sugar Creek Township, yeah, good
gonna get
luck
worse.
anybody living in that
Yeah.
one way in, one way out to get out.
Gotcha.
If you know, I mean, sad if you have to get to work
Yeah,
and
if
you
you
have to
have to
leave a
turn
half
left.
hour earlier
Yeah.
just to get out. Yeah.
We'll continue to look at it.
Okay, and I know this is just, I probably need to go to, a police department meeting, but I've mentioned this at the township meetings where, I'm seeing, in consideration of drivers who stop, who wait, who park in what are truly marked as no parking, no standing, fire lane. So so I'm trying to figure out what I can do, because to me, they're disrespecting emergency services. I don't care if emergency services need to
Are you
do
talking
that.
about private property or are you talking about the road?
Shopping centers
Yeah.
and stuff, so it's, it's like, for example, I went to Dots one night last week, and person went into the dry cleaner there, blatantly just pulled right up to the front, completely turned off their car to pick up and to drop off and pick up.
Pick up.
Sorry. I'm like, that's just a big, it irritates me, It's like, what? How many freaking parking spaces are there in this lot that you can't find
Mhm.
one to park at? But I've mentioned this to the township also, that for me, it's disrespecting emergency services when they just, there's no consequences. And for me, I mean, it's like, I'm not a vigilante on it, but for me, I would love to take a picture and take the police officer and go, here, take this person now. You physically, even though you
And I
physically
don't know the
see.
law on that stuff, so I'm not gonna.
I would assume on private property we can't ticket
I'm
them
pretty sure we can't take them on
unless
private property, but.
unless
I
there's
wouldn't
an
know.
incident. If there were to happen to be a fire or something and they were in the way, then we could probably do something.
Yeah.
But we can't just go up and write tickets for people
Yeah.
parking where they shouldn't be parking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I asked the
But I
police
think,
chief.
if there's a camaraderie between the city and the business leaders of the city, you need to start, reprimanding your customers for parking, kind of work with the business, business leaders and businesses, saying, hey, you should start saying to your customers, say, we are in high regard of emergency services. You need to move your car, before we service,
We will relay the message. But Forrest, you're getting ready to say something?
I asked that question from police chief last year about that scratch grid service, that's what it's called, in front of Dots and along those businesses there. And I asked him, as far as the safety aspect, they have displays in the fall with fodder shocks and pumpkins in that scratch grid surface. And his definition of the scratch grid surface means no vehicles. So the displays are fine, pedestrians walking, all that thing, and that's fine, but vehicular traffic, that's a no-no, so. And I think they do stop people, tell people? I think
Yeah, I don't have the answer,
They
so
can stop.
they do.
I'm saying it's something we can bring up.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, I mean, it's, it's like blatant, it's like,
You know,
I
it's
don't
like,
wanna walk the extra couple.
it's like when you come into town, where the bridge, the scratch grids, if you're coming in, heading east, coming into town, scratch grid on your right, a lot of times people will be turning left and people will go around through the scratch grid. If a police officer's there, he's gonna ticket you. You know, you're not allowed to go in that area.
Yeah, on the road. Yeah.
So,
Well, we will check into it.
Okay,
And
so, just one more quick thing, Donnelly.
your 5 minutes is not 5 minutes.
One more quick thing. I assume that since the business has been, or the building has bought, that uniform sign's finally coming down.
I would assume that they will probably.
Yeah.
put
Oh, that's a
something up
good
there.
point. On the you're talking about the new.
But we have no regulations about signs because the Zetland Street sign has been up for longer than that one without a
Oh,
business
yeah,
there. So
yeah.
we don't have anything that says, they have a sign permit, they can have whatever sign is permitted
long as they're
there.
in
If
compliance with the sign
Right,
ordinance.
if the,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
and we
I got
can't go
it.
down
If-
that road with free speech issues and things like that, we'll get sued in a heartbeat, so.
Anyone else this evening? Does anyone else have any more business to come before us this evening? If none, I call this meeting adjourned.